Hello, everybody. Paula Siskanik here from Catholic Homeschool Conferences and the Catholic Homeschool community. I'm just so happy to have you here with us. Maureen, in typical fashion, we love computers here. It's a love kind of hate relationship because Maureen's having some difficulty. And so I thought, okay, let's just get started. We'll start praying and maybe that will help us to get her in here and her computer fine. Because you really just don't want to miss all the wonderful advice that Maureen can give us. So let's begin with one of my most favorite prayers. Okay, and this prayer is one that my daughter wrote for me in one of those meltdown sessions I was having, and she put it, and I keep it by my bedside. She put it in a laminated little card so that I always have it with me. It is St. Teresa's bookmark. So I invite you all into prayer in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Let nothing disturb you, nothing frighten you. All things are passing. God never changes. Patience obtains all things. Nothing is wanting to him who possesses God. God alone suffices. I'd like to ask the Holy Spirit to come upon this conversation to help us, to help all of you, to also come with a thankful heart, thankful for the opportunity to speak with you, and thankful for the time we have together. I'd also like to thank the Blessed Mother. This is just all these beautiful feast days we're being surrounded by, and in particular, St. Joseph, as we just got announced, the year of St. Joseph, yay. So Maureen, say the
Yes.
prayers. Thank you for praying with me. And we ask all these things through Christ's name, in the name of the Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Amen. Yay, Maureen, glad you're here. So I don't want to assume here that everybody really knows who we are. We've known each other for 25 plus years. Yes, way back when. when we were homeschool newbies. Exactly. And now both of us grandmas rejoicing in that season of life. So it's just an honor and a privilege to spend time here with you, with Maureen. So Maureen, why don't you give us a little that quick intro to give people who you are, and I'll do the same and follow up. Go ahead, Maureen.
Yeah, I'm Maureen Wittmann and a homeschool mom of 7. Actually, I'm no longer a homeschool mom. I'm a homeschool grandma. I just graduated my youngest this last May. So 25 years of homeschooling, loved it. And I'm so glad that I'm able to enter this new season of my life where I can just give fully of myself to help all those homeschool moms, just as those seasoned moms helped me at the beginning of my journey. So, and I get to help my son and my daughter who are both homeschooling their children. So just such great joy. And I'm so glad to be here with you tonight.
Great. Thanks, Maureen. I'm Paula Siskanik, and also a wife, a mom of 7 kids myself too. And I graduated my youngest about 2 years ago. I have just married our 3rd child, my first daughter. I have 3 grandchildren. And just as Maureen has said, it's really been I think an honor to homeschool my kids. I really had all those years to be very close to them. But also during that time, my husband and I had a business called Emmanuel Books. We were very privileged to work with so many great curriculum providers, with people like Maureen and Homeschool Connections. We worked, I got to know so many of the programs, so many thousands of families through that. It was just an honor and a privilege, but it gave me kind of that world view, big, huge, wide vision of all sorts of what homeschooling looked like, what it looks like. And ultimately, it really looks like individually what's best for your family. And I think that's kind of a good segue here into these top tips, because Maureen, I remember so distinctly, and I have to confess, I was actually having a meltdown about a couple of hours ago, and one of my daughters talked me off of it because I'm thinking, great, I have to talk about all these top tips of how to not get overwhelmed at this season. And here I am, not even homeschooling, and I can't even keep true to this. So it was really a great gift to be able to go through and remind myself, just like the cobbler
Yeah.
whose kids go shoeless, here I am talking about homeschooling. And that's really actually one of the first things I want to say about this is that, don't be so hard on yourself because, things that did work, sometimes we forget. We actually need to go back to base one on, those things and say, oh yes, that's right. I remember why I'm getting these, all stressed out. So Maureen, I was going to go through one of the most popular articles I've had on my blog. I do homeschooling consulting, and it's kind of like those families that I consult with will probably recognize these tips, but I'll go through. They're just like 4 tips. Jump in any minute, Maureen, and then we want to quickly get to questions because we have a lot of people that have been submitting questions to us. So
Yeah.
So when we talk about, the end of the year, okay, this is the end of the calendar year. Yeah, it's also the end of a semester. And I would have to say that many families, and especially like when Maureen, you and I got to the point where you have some kids in college, and then there's some families who are homeschooling maybe only the grade school kids. So you tend to follow the school year calendar, but that does not mean you have to follow the school year calendar, correct? So this is a really good break point to pause, to reflect. And isn't it great that it's Advent? The word that's been resonating for me these days has been the word ponder, and reflect. And so with that, I want to say my first top tip is that love always wins. And when I talk about love, I'm really talking about the source of all love as the person in Jesus Christ. And I couldn't always make it to adoration. I couldn't always make it to daily mass. But one of the gifts I got years ago was the book from Vinnie Flynn. Have you ever read it, Maureen? The 7 Secrets
Haven't.
of the Eucharist. And he talks about spiritual communion. And
Yeah,
that
I
was
think
like
my
this
husband has read it. I think
beautiful
he has it.
gift for me
Yeah.
that it was like, yes, yeah, yeah, it's awesome. And then, so I really want to encourage people to say that, Jesus is always available in that sense. You can make a spiritual communion. Do try to. Did you lose me?
I did. I lost you for a minute. Was that me or you?
Okay, am I back? Hello,
You're back.
everybody.
I thought it was
Sorry.
me.
No, it was me. Oh my gosh, this is great.
We need to ask St.
I'm
Isidore
back.
Seville to pray for us, a patron saint of the
Okay,
internet.
this is going to be one of these challenging times. Okay, so talk quicker, Paula. Quickly get them in. But
Can you talk faster?
I don't know. Can I do it faster? I'm a New Yorker. So the second tip is really write things down. At this point in the semester, what I would usually do is write up a list for each one of my kids and say, look, this is what you have to do, and literally hand them that list.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's good to just brainstorm and say, okay, what's everything I want done? And then pare it down to just 3 things that reasonably you can get done. And then give yourself permission to say, I got to let go of the rest. Because then the third thing I come up with is get on the no train. It's this idea that if I'm going to, we got all these wonderful things we want to do with the kids during Advent. If I want to layer in special liturgical celebrations, I need to remove something from their day.
Yes.
I want to make sure that I'm not adding more of a burden. I'm actually making it a doable, reasonable level of work to do.
And if you find all of a sudden you have extra time, you can add that back in. But yeah, generally speaking, add one, take one away. That's a really good rule you're going to hear from any seasoned homeschooler, right?
Exactly.
The hard way.
Yep.
You add too much
Then
in.
that fourth top tip is to celebrate the wins. And
Yes.
that's really about remembering that there's a lot of good stuff that happened. Yeah, yeah, definitely. Can you guys still hear me here?
Yep,
Oh,
you're going
somehow,
good. We hear you.
um, I know, anyway, yeah. Okay, great, perfect, because it's saying things. Anyway, but I wanted to say there was a really nice tip I got from a fellow homeschooler that had said, she suggested that you actually at the end of the year meet with your kids one-on-one. And when you meet with the kids, you actually go through this like little prompt of just saying, okay, what worked? What did you feel really, really great about? What wasn't working? Is this something that we need to change up? And then, what are you looking forward to as you go into the next semester? So, really involving the children, I think, is a great way. One is do it on a one on one because you can never have enough of that one on one time with your children. They grow up, right, Maureen? But they
They do.
also, it's a way for them to get to know your heart and for you to know their heart.
It's
And
probably
so,
my
I mean,
biggest tip. I give that all the time. Make sure
yeah,
you're meeting with your kids one-on-one. Make sure that they are um, a part of your planning process, a part of the decision making. You know, make sure you're hearing their concerns. I think that's really vital to a
yeah,
successful homeschool is not just telling them what to do, but really
right.
seeing kind of a discussion. And like you said, one-on-one, especially with teens. With teens, I would make it special and maybe make hot chocolate or their favorite breakfast or pastry or
Yeah.
whatever. And once a week you have that scheduled time. For us, it was at the coffee shop. Today it's
Mhm.
a little hard. Can't go to the coffee
Yes, it
shop
is a
where I
little
live right
hard because we used to go to daily mass and especially I have three sons that are the three oldest and each one would take a turn. They were actually every Friday they would help fathers serve mass,
now.
as altar servers. Can't do that now, but then we would follow it up with, quick breakfast at the diner
Yeah,
and that was precious memories for me, but it was a time to have conversation and usually things were discussed that you couldn't discuss in front of everybody else and it really did help to form that bond between
yeah,
us.
yeah.
And
And you
it
can
is about
especially
honoring
at
their
the home.
individuality,
Yeah.
their strengths, making sure that you're dialing that into the curriculum. So, Maureen, we got a bunch of
Yeah.
questions and I wanted to dive right in because you're ready for the
I'm ready.
questions, Maureen? Okay, good, good, good. It's great. So let's tackle this one that Nicole had written in. She has four kids here. I said, well, she may have more children, but as far as school, it's second, third, and sixth grade. She says her days seem to drag on until dinner time. Life's always happening. She's doing her best. She's thrilled to be homeschooling. Yay, great. But doesn't have much time to collect herself, catch up with her husband, grading, finding free time. I'm assuming it's because it's my first year, but I don't see things getting better. My kids are unschooling. I have no idea what's best while we're all in transition. How do I avoid burnout by finding my way? And this is a good time to recoup for that. You got some
Yeah.
suggestions, Maureen?
Um, I'm wondering if she has too much on her plate. It kind of sounds like that to me when she says, that she's feeling, like she's underwater a little bit. So I'm wondering if she has too much on her plate. Kind of going back to what you said at the beginning, is there something she can take off or delegate to someone else? Focus on what really needs to be done, and then what you would like to get done, the ideal. But if that doesn't get done, it's okay. Maybe delegate. Are her students old enough to start self-grading? A lot of what I do with my kids, daily work, they self-grade it. So for example, if they're doing Saxon, I didn't grade that every day, only grade the tests. Because self-grading, it helps them to see, oh, I made this mistake. It gets them in the habit of being independent learners and looking for their mistakes and trying to improve. So then when they do the test that you grade, um, that they're prepared for that. She may even want to look into hiring a mother's helper. I don't know if you can do that with the pandemic, but that is something I did for a few years. When I started feeling, a lot of what she's saying, I was feeling that same way. And it was just a little homeschool girl down the street, and she just came and played
Mhm.
with the kids while I got work
Yeah,
done.
I
So maybe
did the
just
same
taking the kids
thing.
outside, yeah, or doing a
Yeah,
project with them, doing a science experiment. But let
it
someone
was
else
great.
Yeah, I
Yes,
work with them.
yes. It was always great to have. We had neighbors' kids and that were young and enthusiastic and just loved my kids. And it was a way for me to breathe and be able to. And I find also
Yeah,
the things like I may not have had the patience to do the craft kits with all the kids,
right.
but somehow this, 13-year-old that came
Oh,
and I had
this
both
girl
a
had her whole
boy.
babysitting kit with,
Yeah.
she was amazing. Yeah, and she had like, yeah, because I am not a craft person, but she was,
Yeah.
you
Yeah,
know.
exactly.
Maybe there's a mom you can trade with. I had a mom, she was real artsy. I'm not artsy. I taught her kids history. She taught my kids music and art. So
Yeah.
that's another idea.
Yeah, that is an idea. That brings me to that idea of outsourcing what you can. And it's kind of like getting stock of yourself saying, what is it that I really, really want to do? I don't want to outsource, but what are the things that I really can outsource? And that even gets to the point I know a mom again who it was things like even just the time to go grocery shopping, delegating out certain things that they ended up changing the day they did it, or they use the pickup service. So any of those things, you have non-negotiables that
Yeah.
mommy needs to do, but then there's things that you really could outsource. And it's really get creative about that and be true to yourself. I know Walter put in a comment, he gives his wife a night off, and that's her chance to get caught up with grading and planning. And I did the same. My husband, yes, God
Yep.
bless him, Larry, would give me, and I would do once a month was I got a Saturday that I literally was my day. And because I'm the kind of person that is a planner by nature, good and bad to be a planner, but so I did not want that stress of never knowing where things were. And it was really important to me for my own self-knowledge was that I needed to have a regular time each month that I knew, okay, the first Saturday of each month, that's my day. I can just pull out, make copies of the pages I need, make adjustments, do some grading. And I think we'll talk a little bit about that too, in terms of people asking what kind of records to keep
Right,
at
right.
the end of the
But I think
year.
that's a really
So
excellent tip. If you have a spouse who's supportive and who can do that or whose work schedule allows for it. My husband did the same thing. Saturdays, he would take the kids, and that was my time to have space, right? And for
mhm.
me, I was just happy to use that time to plan or grade or just because once it was done, I felt so good,
Yeah,
to have that
yeah.
done. And
But didn't you
even,
find also
yeah,
you need to adjust? I mean, that's
yeah.
part
Well,
of
no,
that,
I'm not behind, it
Right,
helped
right.
me not, because once you get behind, it's hard to get caught up sometimes. And so,
Yeah.
and a lot of times he either took them to the library or, when they got a little bit older, he took them to adoration. And one of my daughters shared with us recently that that was probably the best thing that we did for our kids was to
Wow.
take for their dad, taking them to adoration on Saturdays, even though they were little, um, taking them there was just,
So coming up with these
as a,
creative,
30 somethings and 20
yeah.
somethings, they still appreciate. So
So coming up with a creative idea that ended up helping you had like a ripple effect of really helping them to have that spiritual relationship with Jesus and with their father. That's
with
pretty
their
cool,
dad, so
Maureen.
important for kids to have dad time. So whether it's adoration or it's going to play ball at the park or the library or having lunch, yeah, dad time's so important.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
So I wanted to get to Easter's question. She has
yeah,
3 boys, 9, 10, and 13. Great. Congrats, Easter. And I see she has 2 questions for us. And one of them I know I got from the group was this kind of thing of, the first one was any ideas which planner to use for grading, homework, and record keeping. So let's get into like a real practical question. You've got some
yeah.
favorites or tips, Maureen, on that?
Well, it depends on what you want. So if you want something online, I know there's some free ones out there, and the one I like that's online is Scholaric. So it's scholaric.com. That's SCHOR, I'm sorry, SCHOLARIC
You
dot
could put it
com.
in the
Yeah, I'll type it in.
commute. We're going to put links in the replay. So if we quote all these things, don't worry about having to
Okay.
grab them down.
Okay,
So
so I've
Maureen,
typed
you
in
give that
that.
to me.
So
Yeah,
it's created by
perfect.
a Catholic homeschool dad. So it's an online record keeping and planner. So that's what I liked, and that's what I used.
Mhm.
I also love Margot Davidson has CatholicPlanner.com.
Yeah.
Um, my adult kids, they all love that planner, and that's what I get them for Christmas every year. I loved it for myself. It's not really
Is it digital, Maureen, or
it's
just
not, that's a
paper?
paper planner, and
Okay, great.
so I like the small one that would like fit in my purse. And then she has the bigger one. So that's one option. I like it
Yeah.
because it's so Catholic. It has all the readings and the liturgical colors and holy days,
Yes,
things in
yes.
there. So that's what I loved about it.
Well, I
I
saw a
like,
review on Jen McIntosh, who does
yeah,
wildflowers and marbles, which has been one of our speakers, and she did a review of it. And then even Margot does a demo of that planner in the um,
yeah,
on the homeschool directory. So it's just
yeah,
if you go to our main website where we call it the exhibitor hall, it's really a directory of all sorts of Catholic businesses. But I just added that question to the community, and it was really nice to see such a grouping of different planners. So Easter, I'd recommend looking up and seeing what works for you. For me personally, I've gone to something that's called a bullet journal, and a bullet journaling, you can just Google that, and from the guy who invented it, and it's more like a rapid fire way of just getting your thoughts out. And
yeah,
then each month you spend some time in reflection. And then for the kids, what I used to do was just, I created the first week of school, just kind of an outline Monday, just a grid on an Excel when my kids are like sixth grade and up. So Easter, you have bigger kids. Around sixth grade, what I would do is have them keep their own planners and their own
yes,
schedules. So I would just give them what I expected them to do for the week. So, math, 5 lessons, your novel, get through 3 chapters this week, do these spelling words. So just a big general plan for the week. I would give that to them in just one sheet, and then they would get planners either on the computer or a paper one, and they had to map out their week. It was twofold. One is I'm starting to model and teach them time management, and two was they had to own their time. So in the first month we start doing it, my kid would say, oh sure, I can finish, on a book that's 500 pages in one sitting. Obviously that's unrealistic, so we would talk that out. But it was a way for us to really start working on them, that self-knowledge of
yeah,
how do I work best? Do I work better in batches? Do I work better little bit each day? And some subjects you do, like a language, you may need to do it every day. Math, we know the subjects build on each other, but other subjects and depending on their grade, they would do it once a week, and they
yeah.
might bang through 3 lessons to do that. So,
And
um,
Elizabeth in the chat brings up a good point. She says, I don't keep track of grades for grade school or junior high. And quite frankly, I didn't either, because we were shooting for mastery, right? Everyone gets an A because we don't move on until they master it. So I didn't really start keeping grades. So I needed to, because I had college bound kids. So I had to create a transcript, but no, I'm with you, Elizabeth. I didn't either. And you don't need to keep track of every single grade, right? You need a final grade. Think about your last day of high school back in the day. And right, there's papers all over the parking lot because these kids just empty out of their folders. You don't have to save every little piece of paper and every little grade. Keep those main things, and you may need to do that depending on where you live to show that your children are learning and advancing. So maybe finals, midterms and finals.
yes,
Yeah.
I know Susie Lloyd. Hi, Susie. Glad you're here.
Oh, hi, Susie.
Yes, she said that she doesn't set grades in stone until high school, and it's true. That I should, I'm so glad you brought that up, because I think, especially if you're coming from a school environment and you're transitioning to homeschool, you may think you have to replicate that exactly the same, and it really isn't. It's really about making sure there's like mastery of things. It's not just ticking off boxes and saying, yeah, we did 20 pages in this workbook. Well, if they didn't understand what they were doing, it may take 5 days to get through one sheet in the workbook. and that's not something, you necessarily can grade in that typical school classroom way of thinking about grading.
Yeah.
One of the other things I did too was just keep a file folder for each kid. And as you said, as those things come up, certain milestones, I plop them into that file folder, especially for my high school kids. It was the tests, it was key papers. So then this way it was all in one place. So great. Easter also asked about, Maureen, how to get the balance between taking care of me and teaching the 3 kids. I feel bad if I leave them to do classwork when I really need to do math or get energy or just, stay sane. And so,
Right.
yeah, what about mommy me time? How do you do that?
You should not feel guilty about going to mass. Let me just say that. Leave that guilt at home. Do not feel bad about going to mass. You need that, and your kids need that. You need to be fed spiritually in order to feed them, right? It's kind of like when you fly. My husband and I were talking about this just the other day. And right, and before you fly, they give you the instructions. And if the cabin loses oxygen and the little masks come down, you have to put it over your mouth first and then the child. Because if you're not getting oxygen, you can't help them. Feed your spiritual self so that you can feed your children. So don't feel guilty, and like I said, like we said at the beginning, go back to have your husband or mom or sister or someone take those kids for a day so you can have a day to yourself,
Yeah.
and get caught up or do whatever it is you need to do for you.
Right,
Yeah.
right. And that gets back to also the saying, the tips I was talking about, again, centering on your prayer life. It really does make a difference. I got this cute little framed needlework thing from our Christmas bazaar years ago. And it says, if your day isn't hemmed in prayer, it's most likely going to unravel, and it's true. I find things, where is your center of gravity? And it is about taking care of yourself, not in a selfish way, like for vainglory, but it's really to center yourself back on Christ, on who you're living for.
I used to have a really
Yeah.
good friend many years ago, and she had homeschooled for a good number of years and quit to go back to work as a school teacher in a high school, put her kids in school. And I asked her one day, Lori, what do you miss most about homeschooling? And she said, the prayer life. She said, there's something about homeschooling that brings you to your knees. And her prayer life just really suffered once
Mhm.
she stopped homeschooling. So
Yeah. Wow.
I really encourage you to pray with your kids, but also have that time where
Yeah,
you're
and I mean
feeding
it's
your
it's
spiritual
even
self.
some people are just need exercise, physical, just going
Yeah.
for a walk, so it's heart, mind, soul, that whole thing, and being able to take time off and taking a break for yourself, just giving yourself permission to do that. All right, let's get to some of these other questions. Okay, Maureen, we
Yeah.
have one from we have one from Sherry, and Sherry says, with all that we lost in terms of outside activities, how can we make each day, week special at the end of the year? Now that we're kind of closed in. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. The pandemic's really made this hard for us, hasn't it? We talked a little bit before about sitting down with your kids, and I think that's good advice here too. Sit down with your children, ask them what they'd like to do to make the end of the year special. Maybe it's having mom time and baking Christmas cookies, or discovering new Advent traditions. I just saw there's this cute little YouTube channel, Catholic Mom and Daughter, and they just did one. The daughter's a teenager. I don't know how old she is, 16, 17, and talked about Advent traditions that they've done over the years. And yeah, maybe it's doing a service project for your parish or a local homeless shelter or something. But I would sit down and talk about it with the kids and see where that goes.
Yeah, even my
Light up their
I say
eyes.
my young adult kids, we did. It was really funny because again, there is something very different this year. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Again, we had these traditions. There were times we would put up the Christmas tree, well, it is up now because we felt like we needed it. We needed
Yep.
Christmas now. And that, I think that's what we have to be a little bit open to, is that, it's definitely feeling very different this year. And as a result, that means it's an opportunity, and that opportunity is to get closer with our kids. So yeah, same thing. My kids,
Yeah.
they came up with a list and said, what are those things, those traditions, those events that really you love most about Christmas, and can we do them? And it really turned out to be some of the things that are very family oriented, as you said, things we don't need to go out and do,
Sometimes those memorable moments are things like going for walks.
yes.
Like my daughter remembering going to adoration. For me, going fishing with my dad. Those are my most cherished memories. So it
Right.
can be something very simple, like
Exactly.
making
It's great.
time for a walk.
Yeah. And the thing is, never, as a mom, we tend to feel like, okay, we got to invent and do everything. No, one of the best gifts you can give your kids too is to, quote, give them time to be bored. It really, there is this idea that we're setting their schedule, we're picking their curriculum, and really there is a bit of sitting on your hands and letting them be inventive and creative, and
Right.
giving them time to, be able to take charge. And let them blossom in their own time as well. So good. Our next question here is one about curriculum. Okay. And Diane asks, how hard is it to switch curricula mid-year? She gives a whole detailed description about things that she's used and she hasn't used. I just wanted to get to the heart of that question of saying, when do you switch curriculum? Is it a hard
Right.
thing to do? And when should you do it? What are your thoughts on that, Maureen?
Well, I'm not a big fan of completely changing up the curriculum mid-year, unless the current plan is really a complete bust. If it's really not working, the kids hate it, you hate it, it's not fitting that child's learning style or whatever, that's one thing. But if it's working, but you're just not a big fan, you may want to just keep going till the year end, and then spend that time once the year is ended, the school year has ended, to really reflect on, okay, what worked, what didn't work. And then, maybe even try, if you want to change up the plan, that way you have summer to kind of try things out, make sure that it is a good fit for your family. If you need to switch, all right, it's like Elizabeth's saying, I just switched high school biology, it was the best move. So yeah, if it is a bust and you got to change now, maybe just take a little longer Christmas break to give yourself time to review and adjust.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Susie
I'm
says
not,
here
I mean,
too.
yes, I mean, there have
She
been
says, I'm
times,
not a big switcher, but one time she just had to do it. It was taking over our lives. It's
right,
true. You may be
right,
signed up for too many online courses, or even with
yeah,
us, we found extracurricular activities. Sometimes we just realized, oh my gosh, that's leading our curriculum. That's leading our lives. And
right,
and sometimes you have to have the courage to do that and
right.
say, this isn't the direction that we want to be going in, and we need to make a
Yeah, so
change.
once again, take it to the Blessed Sacrament, and
Yes.
what
Well,
Jesus
I do have
did
a
for you.
practical thing, a tip that I've used over and over again. It's this one thing I call one goal per year per child. And it's kind of that centering idea. And I'm going to, again, on the replay, I have a little, just a PDF that people can use. And what it does is it really tells people to focus on one goal per year where you want to see growth. And you always go back to that form. And when you go back to that form, then you know that you can align your curriculum to that. So
Yeah,
good.
very good advice.
Can you guys still
Oh, we just lost Paula for a second. Oh, there you are.
you go? Can you hear me now?
Here you go.
And then we thought Maureen's was going to be out. I am
Yeah,
so
I was the
sorry.
problem at the beginning, and then,
But now I'm the problem child. Okay. Anyway, I was talking about the one goal per year per child. I don't know how
yeah,
much
we
you
got
got of
that.
that.
We were able to
Okay,
do that.
good. But that's when I say sometimes just remind yourself what's the goal. And
Yeah,
if it's one of the secondary things, drop it, change it up. But if it's the main thing, you really need to focus on that main area of growth. So good.
yeah.
All righty, good. Another question here was on at the start of the new year, they will have early teens, 13. This is from chat. and tweens, 11-year-old triplets. Yay!
Oh my God.
Great. No little ones to consider. I'd like to make these years with them more memorable in our homeschool and in our relationships in general. Life right now is so sweet with a sprinkling of sour when the mood kicks in. What would be your top 3 must-have tips for moms with these tweens ages? So, I mean, I think we've touched upon a few things, but go ahead, Maureen. You got some ideas on that? The tween.
Well, first, I love, she says, I just have a 13-year-old and 11-year-old triplets. I just have, you know,
Just,
you
yes.
hang out the Catholic homeschoolers for is just, that's a
Right,
lot.
right.
I used to have a neighbor they had 3 kids in 1 year. They had 1 and then twins 11 months later. And she was, oh, how do you handle 7 kids? I'm like, how do you handle 3 in 1 year? Mine are spread out.
Right.
It's easy. Oh my gosh. And she's asking how to make that memorable. That is just memorable in itself. What a fun house that must be. I would take lots of pictures, of the kids. One thing I used to do when the kids were little, because I was always so worried about, someone coming to my house and saying, you can't homeschool or whatever. I always take pictures
Yes.
of all the projects they would make, all the little Lego things and
Mhm.
and how fun now to look back on those. And I saved, their little drawings they would do, and we would do, when I would tell a story, they would retell the story and draw a picture. But yeah, I would take lots of pictures. I think one thing you could do if you want to create memories is
Mhm.
my kids for Christmas every year, a couple of my adult kids, there are all these programs out there where you can make booklets, and they're not that expensive. They do like a little hard-covered book, and it has pictures inside, and you could do that for your children. That's something they can keep forever. And um, yeah, that's one thing I would do. Let's see,
Yeah.
3 top tips. What else? I mean,
Yes. Well, I know one of the things for the tweens that we would do in those years too was we actually, and this would happen right as we come off the Christmas,
yeah,
holidays, and we're trying to get started again, and it's in here in Delaware, it's cold. Nobody really feels like getting back to school. We actually would take a break, almost like a pretend virtual trip. So one year we did the Lewis and Clark journey. We just got everything Lewis and Clark. We even pitched a tent in the living room. Okay. So, we gave ourselves permission to do some of these things that were just off the main curriculum. And we
yeah.
would focus on one topic that year. And those were the things that were tremendously memorable, as you said. Very sweet. It's at the grades that they're not like going to roll their eyes and say, oh, mom, are we really doing a tent in the living room? They're really
I,
enthusiastic about it. So you can get them involved.
yeah, the
It just
11-year-olds will probably still have fun making tents and forts and pillow mountains in the
exactly.
living room. And
Yeah.
and going back to what we were saying before about a date night, especially with triplets or twins, when you have multiples like that, to have some one-on-one time with just you. I remember when my grandma passed away, my dad saying in the eulogy that he said, what's special about my mom was she had 8 kids, but you always felt like an only child,
Wow.
right? You just felt that individual love, right?
Yeah.
So I think that would be a fun thing to do is maybe once a month you have a date night with one child. I
Yeah.
always tried to do it once a week, but we never did once a week. Once every
Yes.
2 weeks.
Right.
I would
Right.
take one child out and have one-on-one time with that child. And they got to pick where we went. It just couldn't be a movie because I wanted us to be
Hmm.
interacting.
Hmm.
So a lot of times it's a coffee shop or the bookstore. Might
So,
just be going for a walk in the park.
that is the age that, I was a big fan about, in our family, it was, we did music lessons. And I'm not a big fan of just starting them really young, just a personal thing, starting them really young and forcing them to sit by the piano, because I always saw that it was like, I'm just putting on more work on myself. So we really didn't start official music lessons until they were 11. And at that point, I let them even pick their instrument. And I know that maybe you can't get to music lessons, but I've seen some really, really amazing, powerful online tutorials, people that you get into a Zoom class and you can have music lessons. But I just have to say, now that my kids are older, they were just pulling out all their instruments, and the memories of my even just sitting in the room with them practicing with their teacher was such a precious gift. but also gave them, they now play together. My kids tended to all pick different instruments. So yesterday we had the cornet and the flute and the violin all trying to put together Christmas songs.
Oh,
So
would try
really,
it.
yeah, it was really great.
I love it. Yeah,
So that's a good.
and Susie and Walter are putting some good suggestions in the chat box. Check out the local museum. Susie
Mhm.
mentioned board games like the
Yes.
Whitmans. So when everyone's here for Christmas, and all the kids are here, the board games come out, the cards come out. Um, Still as adults, that's a
Oh,
fun thing,
yeah. Game
right?
night is big here. That was part
Yeah,
of our Advent. How do we make Advent special this year? Was to turn off the
very well.
television and do official game night every Monday night. It's game nights, and it's true. That's great. That is a
Yeah,
great
I'm
idea.
gonna read Walter's suggestion real quick because he had just sent it to us. I thought he sent it to everyone else. It says, check
Oh,
to see if
okay.
your local museum has something coming up and study on that subject before it comes, then go visit it. So for example, once we were in St.
Yeah,
Louis, the museum there had the Van Gogh display. So yeah, see what's coming up, and then you could do a little unit study and you finish it off by going to the
right.
museum and get a
Well,
picture
now,
of you in
right
front of
now, many of the museums are closed, but I know I have one of those daughters who was
March
homeschooled doing her master's in history, is got an internship this summer, and they are really doing these virtual gallery exhibitions. And they're also doing workshops. So in fact, one of the places my daughter and I did a chocolate tastings from chocolates around the world, and the chocolates got mailed to us, and we were able
Wow.
to do this with this chef who's been this master, so chocolatier, and we learned all about how you really taste chocolates and the differences between them. So those things, you're right, museums are another really, really
Fun.
great source of fun things to do together with your kids and your tweens.
Yeah. So right
Great.
now, virtual museums. Yeah, sadly.
Okay, so I have another one here about friendship. This
Yeah.
one's Lee. I'm it's Linh, so please forgive me if I didn't say your name properly. It says, for me, I'm still back and forth between homeschooling and sending my kids to actual real school. Okay, so it must be a newbie. Main reason is friends, the social aspect that my kids are missing out on. I really want them to have friends outside the family, but I feel like I can teach them more at home. So is he
Yeah.
missing out on making friends if he's homeschooled? Great question.
No, he's
No.
not. He's not at all. My kids, you know, range from 18 to 31, and their closest friends are today, kids they were homeschooled with. So you got to get into a community, get into that local community. I know it's hard right now with the pandemic, but find those local people. And maybe it's a park date where you can social distance and be safe, or maybe it's virtual for now. But go to your parish, ask the parish secretary who are the homeschoolers. Maybe Google your city and homeschool group. Maybe search Facebook right here in the community. Right, you
Yes,
search for people.
exactly.
Right, you can search the community for people who live near you. So
Yes.
my my kids always kid when everyone brings up socialization. They're like, we were too well socialized. We probably spent too much time with friends because homeschooling takes less time. The academic part,
Right.
because I
Right.
don't have to manage a large classroom. So, we had a lot of time we did shooting sports, and there's all kinds of things that we did, and clubs and groups. And our house was a house where everyone came and hung out, right, in the neighborhood. We were that house. So gosh, there's no reason your child has to be without friends. And they may even have stronger friendships because they'll be able to connect with kids that not based on who's in his classroom, not based on their age or whatever, their neighborhood. You may be able to make friends with people you might not otherwise meet. So
Yeah.
just go to daily mass. I bet you'll meet some homeschoolers by going to daily mass. Go to different churches every week.
Yeah.
You'll be
So,
able to
I
pick them
mean,
out.
right. We always talk about, and it's not, I always believe that we need to kind of choose things to do out of love, not fear. And,
Yeah.
if homeschooling your children there's plenty to be afraid of, and there's good reasons to homeschool them out of the fears of today. But I'm saying it really ultimately has to be in love. And one of the things that was my family's reason why to homeschool was really to simplify our lives and to have our children become each other's best friends. And we can't really downplay that a lot. Friends are going to come and go in your life. They really are.
Right.
There are friends that we've made from homeschooling that are like cousins. They're part of our family, and it's true because they don't have that same kind of peer pressure. So there is this luxury of being able to really form real long lasting friendships. They've seen each other since they were little kids, growing up through everything to the point of being in each other's weddings, as
Right.
as in the bridal party, and just um I can't begin to say the joy of those friendships. But they weren't a lot of friends, and we do have to qualify that. Is it about being the popular kid and having to have tons and tons of friends?
Yeah.
And then we're dealing with all those bad issues. Then we're dealing with things, instead of this idea of saying, I have these beautiful gifts that are on loan to me, these precious children that are so unique. How is it that we can rejoice and savor our time together and
Yeah.
be able to give them the opportunity to express it, and not necessarily with people that are their own age? You're right, it can be a mix of ages. That's such
Well,
a
we were
more
families
natural.
with families, right? We were friends with families. It's like,
Yes.
right? Because we got together as families. So it's so different than a school setting where you're hanging out with, 25 other people of the exact same age. You're hanging out with families. And those families we're still close to and connected to. It's funny. I always thought these kids would grow up and marry one another, and they didn't. And it's
Yes.
because they're like, when I brought it up once, my daughter was like, ooh, that would be like dating my
My
brother.
brother, right? Yes.
These homeschool kids were so close to one another. It was
Right,
like
right.
siblings. And
Exactly. Yes, that's very true.
we
But
had to go
I
outside
love
to other
that,
homeschool
Maureen.
groups to find siblings or to find spouses.
Yeah. You talk about them as families, and that's really it. It's the domestic church. God, in his beautiful plan, has really put that together for us. And I don't really think it's natural to say that we have to separate into these other groups. I mean, as a family, they'll naturally gravitate with some of the little kids will bunch together and the middle ones will bunch together. But then sometimes they float between both, and you see the little guy is just, clinging on the leg of the 16-year-old. So it really is this idea of family friendships. I think that's
Yeah.
beautiful, Maureen. That's really,
Oh,
really
yeah.
great.
Well, and we're from
Susie said in here
uh,
they created their own support group 26 years ago, and now it's huge. Tons of homeschoolers out there.
yeah,
And 3 of her kids married homeschoolers. It's so
but from
great.
other homeschool groups.
Yes, it's so
My
great.
oldest
Yeah.
son married a homeschooler, but she's from a completely different city.
Wow. Right.
So,
Right. So let me see. I think there was one more question I wanted to get. This one from Nicole. She says, any tips on how to make yourself get it done instead of being distracted by other things? How to keep homeschool as a top priority when there's so much else that needs your attention. She has 9 children, husband, home, extended family, activities, holiday. Long list,
right.
right? Yes.
So accountability, I would say, you can do one of two things. I had friends, we held each other accountable in our homeschool group. So you're checking in on each other. The other option is a homeschool coach or counselor. So for example, Paula does homeschool coaching. Susie Lloyd, who's also here tonight, does homeschool coaching or counseling. And if you have to report to that person, you're
Yes.
going to stop and think, I need to get this done. You're going to have that motivation. And that's my advice, is just to have someone who you're really connected to, and you're helping each other. So, if it's a local friend, you're helping one another and keeping each other accountable. And when you're having a bad day, you call that friend and say, walk me through
Yes.
this, or I'm really
I-
stressed out, I'm not getting it done. And they can give you a little advice or calm you down. When you're Googling
Right. Now
boarding schools in France,
Nicole mentioned
get a
in there
friend to
that you're
call.
saying keeping school as the top priority. And, that's to me was the key of that, was that in the sense of, is that, need to be the top priority at this precise moment. So it's sort of, a balance of really kind of every day intentionally saying, what is the top priority of what I'm going to do today? And wasn't it, Maureen, I think you told me the story, or no, I think it was Nancy. That was it. Was it Nancy? Anyway, I heard the story about somebody who had a lot of children, and basically the wife had, said to her husband, I can do two things today.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, right. I can either, clean the house, wasn't it that one? Or,
Yep. I can clean the house, I can educate the kids, I can make a nice meal. Pick two.
pick two out of those. Yeah.
I can't do all three. Yeah.
I love that story. So it was you, Maureen. Yeah,
I think a lot
exactly.
of us tell that story. I think a lot of us come to that realization, because I've heard other people say it too. But yeah,
Yeah,
I
so
always
I
tell people
love
I
that
can't do it all.
accountability, realistic priorities is, and then also it's just the idea, again, I get back to that whole thing, one goal per child per year, and really in the sense that you're always keeping focused on the most important things, because there's always going to be distractions out there. There is no doubt, no matter what. And the other thing is to plan for derailments. You have to, it's like, don't be surprised that there's distractions. You know what I mean? It's almost like, oh yeah, that's right, I'm going to be distracted today, so therefore just
Well, and
accept it.
one thing that I did in my homeschool is I found that if we did homeschooling events in the morning,
Yes,
school didn't happen because we get home in the afternoon and then I start tidying up and getting dinner going. And so one thing that I did that kept me on track was we only did outside activities after lunch. So it was like, okay, if we're going to go to book buddies today and everyone loved book buddies, then we got to get our work done before we go. And that's what kept me in line, because I found otherwise, yeah,
right,
school didn't happen a
right.
lot.
It's
So
true. And so it's like you're
activities
setting
and
yourself up
accountability.
for failure if you're not being true. Know thyself, know my children. That, and it's very true. If everybody's going out of the house for an activity, chances are you're not going to come back and do a lot of schoolwork.
Oh, and think about how much work it takes to leave the house. You got to get all the kids dressed, and you get all these kids dressed, and then you get those kids dressed, and then those kids have taken off their clothes or their shoes, or you're getting them all out and dressed, and so make sure when you're going out, you're getting a lot done when you go out, and that you really do need to go out. It's nice to go out for a rosary with the group, but maybe that day you need to just do a rosary as a family, because
Exactly.
it's just
That
too much
goes back
to
into
handle.
my tip of
Or
get on
little.
the no train. And it's that
Yeah.
idea
Yeah.
again. And if you want follow through, you really have to decide. And to decide means you're going to cut something out. That's just the way it is. And yet that's not a problem. It's almost like, okay, you're giving yourself the focus that that particular item or task or priority, whether it's that
Right.
we need to be homeschooling, we really not need to get intentional about learning some particular subjects, or intentional about getting out and starting music lessons or being a part of a book group, making sure that those priorities that you pick are intentionally going to see growth for those particular children, but that
Exactly.
also you're not overtaxing yourself. Exactly. Good.
Yeah.
Susie jumps in and says, yes, St. Francis de Sales said, expect things to go wrong. Yes, they do. Well,
We
Maureen,
do
we're
like
kind
to
of
laugh,
now
especially
at the
today.
top of the hour. Anybody else got another question? Otherwise, I think we covered a lot of ground. I think
We
this has
did
been just
good.
super, super. I really want to
Yeah,
thank
sure.
everybody for joining in. No, this is just going to be every Thursday in the community. We will be running live events of a variety, either inviting people that have something to share. For example, we had Kendra Tierney came in to talk about the liturgical year. We had Nancy talking about how to make Advent special this year. Next week, we're going to have Dominic D'Souza, one of our partners for the Catholic Homeschool Conference, talking about an Emmanuel fair. So this is something that, we as Catholics know, Christmas doesn't end on Christmas Day. It just begins.
Right.
So we're going to talk a little bit about, he's got this wonderful fair virtually. That's something that families can do, join in. It's going to be a way to continue the season. Please join us at the Catholic Homeschool Community, and that website is catholichomeschoolcommunity.com. You can reach us at catholichomeschoolconference.com. You'll see, again, we're starting to put together a schedule for the big conference coming up next year. We have a lot of really great things coming up in 2021, but we want to hear from you. So please shoot us an email at any point to let us know how we can be of service, what we can bring to you to make your homeschool life joyful and faith-filled. I want to thank you, Maureen. It's always such a delight
You, and
when
thank
we're
you,
together.
Walter.
Walter behind the scenes. Yay. Thank you.
Keep us running.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us. May you have a blessed Advent. May you have a blessed feast of Our Lady Guadalupe that's coming up on Saturday. Take care. Blessed Advent. May God bless you. Bye.
Good night, everyone. Thank you.
Good night.